Lady in the Water is like an inside joke. M. Night Shyamalan made the movie for his kids, and I have to ask myself, are they the only ones that are going to appreciate it? It's cute that you base this movie on a childhood fairy tale, but maybe don't use a fairy tale that you made up that nobody else has ever heard of, and put it alongside the grounded reality of a blue-collar man running an apartment complex. Welcome to today's episode of reviewing The Critically Condemned. This movie starts off with a series of animated figures, filling us in on a bunch of exposition about how the water people used to live in communion with humans. And now, because of man's lust for power, mankind has been separated from the sea nymphs. They're called Narfs in this movie? Narf! Now the Narfs are trying to reach out to mankind again and warn them about some ambiguous destruction in the future. And then there's these bad monsters called Scrunts that look like wolves made of grass, and they're trying to kill the Narfs for no real discernible reason. All of that crystal clear? No? See, that's the problem. It's a complicated world that M. Night Shyamalan is trying to create, but it doesn't seem fully realized. As the movie gets going, we see the Narf, who's played by Bryce Dallas Howard, meet the main character named Cleveland. We follow Cleveland as he learns about this secret world, but not from the Narf herself. No, that would make too much sense. She's too crippled with fear. Instead, Cleveland has to harass one of his tenants, whose Korean mother, who doesn't speak English, remembers the bedtime story when she was a child. At one point, we have to watch Cleveland on the phone with the daughter as she's interpreting what her mother says back to Cleveland. It is a painful way to handle exposition. But before I get ahead of myself, let me talk about the few good things this movie has going for it. Because the whole point of tackling The Critically Condemned is to uncover the little nuggets of brilliance in this steaming pile of garbage. Too harsh? Cleveland is played by Paul Giamatti, and this dude is a constant professional no matter what kind of role he's being asked to play. His characterization of Cleveland is raw and sympathetic. His emotional investment is evident throughout the film, but really shows up at the end of the movie when Cleveland finally lets his guard down and shares the pain he's been secretly dealing with. The character also has a stutter, which Giamatti incorporates seamlessly. It's much more effective than a certain Star Wars character that shall remain unnamed. The cast of characters around the apartment building is a lot of fun. There's a group of stoners, a crazy cat lady, a guy who only works out one half of his body. You know, the usual crowd. And there's a chunk of cool cameos from actors that you're probably familiar with. Jeffrey Wright, Bob Balaban, Bill Irwin, and of course, M. Night Shyamalan himself. M. Night Shyamalan has cast himself in the role of Vic, a guy who writes a book that will one day inspire a leader to save humanity. Despite the self-indulgent aspects of this, I like the idea how little things that a person can do today might have a lasting effect over time. Or as one of the characters in the movie says, they are seeds to many great thoughts. Change doesn't always happen, and perhaps rarely happens in an instant. Change takes time. This is good stuff. Throughout the film, M. Night Shyamalan subtly reminds us that we live in a broken world. Anytime a TV is on in the background, the news is broadcasting footage of war and destruction. We eventually learn that Cleveland is a victim of violence and that his wife and children were all murdered during a home invasion. It's the painful human moments like this where the movie really shines. Experiencing heartache in the world today and looking forward to a leader who will give us hope is a universal theme that really should have been explored more in this movie. Instead, M. Night Shyamalan loses control of his own mythos. His mystical cast is way too complex for its own good. We learn about these creepy tree monkeys called Tartutic that are gonna keep the Scrunts from breaking the rules and killing the Narf. Narf. Cleveland learns from the story that he has to find a symbolist, a guardian, a healer, the guild, in order to send the Narf back to her world. It's starting to turn into a role-playing game. Cleveland then proceeds to spend a significant amount of time piecing together who out of the apartment's many residents can fill these roles. So the stoners and the old cat lady and everyone willingly goes along with this absurd story, which is a little weird, and they all get together to return the Narf to her homeworld, and it doesn't work. Because Cleveland selected the wrong people! So all that time was wasted earlier in the film piecing together the ingredients for success because it wasn't successful. Yeah, None of it mattered. So they quickly find the actual symbolist to interpret the actual prophecy, to find the actual healer and guild in order to send the Narf back home. At the same time, the grass monsters are coming in for the kill, and the tree monkeys finally show up, but luckily, the eagle comes down from the sky to take the Narf back to ocean heaven. I swear I'm not making this up, y'all. This is actually what happens. It's too much. It's just too much. And at the end, I'm like, did Narf Dallas Howard actually accomplish her goal? I mean, if her objective is to convince Vic to write his book, then why does she spend so much time with Cleveland? Is Cleveland just like a happy accident in her quest to encourage Vic? Because that's a weird way to approach your main character. That is, if Cleveland is in fact the main character. See, Shyamalan doesn't strike the proper balance between the fantasy world he created in the real world. There's way too much talk about creatures and guilds, but we don't see them operating in the fantasy setting that they should be. Either we need to talk less about these creatures and legends, or we need to take the cast out of the apartment building that they've been stuck in the whole movie and put them into the fantasy world. Shyamalan's just trying to do too much in a single movie. This isn't a Lord of the Rings trilogy here. And speaking of Lord of the Rings, I think this is a classic example of a director having too much creative power, like George Lucas in the prequel trilogy, or Peter Jackson in the Hobbit films. And dare I predict that the same thing might be happening with James Cameron and the Avatar franchise. We'll see. You see, oftentimes an artist's best work comes out when they're limited in some sense by money or even other people. If a director is so revered that he's surrounded himself with a bunch of yes men, then no one is gonna have the guts to be like, bro, maybe this isn't a good idea. Well, that's my review for Lady in the Water. I give this movie 67 Narfs. Because it doesn't even matter. Narf. Before you go, please do me a huge favor, guys. Like this video. If I have 50 views and only 7 likes, then that means there's 43 of you that aren't hitting that button. But seriously, it will help me out a lot. Also, feel free to comment below about Lady in the Water or M. Night Shyamalan, or suggest what kind of critically condemned movie I should do next. And a big shout out to Will Ballantyne for the suggestion for this video. See you later, guys. I'm a lady in the water, baby. You gotta rub me the right way, honey. I'm a lady in the water, baby. Come on in, let me out.